Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Happy Wednesday. I am here in Atlanta and it is so overcast. It's crazy for this time of year. But I wanted to jump on real quick and talk to you very quickly, specifically you women, about your submissive language. And you're probably like, what does this even mean, Piper? So a lot of us fall prey to submissive language. And there's a lot of different reasons that we fall prey to submissive language and we use this language. So first, let's talk about how we need to identify, okay? Our first step is how to identify submissive language. So what is submissive language? So it's things like you say sorry for everything. Sorry I've walked into a conversation. Sorry I've walked into a room. Sorry I've opened my mouth. Are you a serial sorrier? Are you a serial sorrier? Another way to identify submissive language is you start a conversation with just a moment of your time, or, well, I was just thinking. You're always questioning or have kind of a questioning tone to what you say. Sometimes you'll enter a conversation and qualify it saying, just real quick, it'll just be a minute, just real quick. Or you're going to say things like, I'm not sure, or I'll try. Another form of submissive language is that you end statements with a question. So say you are on the phone with one of your friends and you just picked up a new keto cookbook. And you say to her, I bought this new keto cookbook. You hear the intone, the keto cookbook. So at the end of the statement, you have an intonation of asking a question, as if I need your permission to actually have purchased this keto cookbook. Do you think I should go through with this keto cookbook? You're constantly giving someone else the reins in what you're doing. Another way that we can use submissive language is that we take no credit for ourselves. Do you say we all the time? I know I do. Something that's really became apparent to me in the last couple of weeks, and I was trained to use the royal we years and years ago. And it really stems from, your submissive language stems from a lot of different areas. But the reason why it's damaging for you as a powerful, beautiful, amazing woman to use submissive language is that it shows a lack of confidence. People aren't going to have confidence in your abilities and your strengths that I absolutely know that you have. That kind of submissive language and even behavior is going to be saying to people, don't see me, don't hear me, right? So it's going to project a persona that maybe you don't want to project anyway. And here's the other thing. It's telling people that you're incapable. You're incapable of whatever it may be, buying a cookbook on your own, taking care of a friend's kids, turning that report in on time. So a lot of times the submissive behavior, the submissive language, it comes from a place rooted in your strengths. Because here's the thing. A lot of times when we say the royal we, like we've done this project, rather than you stating what you have accomplished, you're just trying to be inclusive. There's nothing wrong with this. Or maybe you're a serial sorrier, right? Maybe it's just because you're just trying to be aware of other people's time. There's nothing wrong with that. So a lot of times when we have this submissive language, we've learned it. We've been told we need to be quiet, we need to sit back, or we really do truly lack the confidence. So I want you to ask yourself, what kind of submissive behavior are you using, or submissive language are you using? Are you a serial sorrier? Do you start every sentence with just, or real quick, or I'm not sure, or I'll try? Or are you constantly deferring to others, saying the we? Do you soften your tone? That's a big one I see with women. They soften their tone, they soften their presence. Why are you doing that? Use your voice. Use your voice. So today, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about your submissive language. You need to identify your language. You need to identify those behaviors as well. Listen, submissive behavior can happen too. Do you go into a room and you hide? You cross your arms and cross your legs? You make sure your purse is up tight against you and all your things are set in your place? That shows submissive behavior as well. And there's nothing wrong with submissiveness in certain situations. Sometimes it's not a situation where we can speak up, but why aren't you using your voice? Do you want to walk in confidence and walk in your own? So you need to identify those submissive behaviors. What are they? What are they? The second thing you need to do is you need to recognize your strengths, because every one of our weaknesses is rooted in a strength. But here's the thing. We don't want to strengthen those weaknesses, right? We don't want to strengthen those submissive language patterns that we're using. We want to strengthen our strengths. So what are your strengths? What are your strengths? Are you generous? Are you kind? Are you always wanting to be inclusive? Those are awesome strengths. So how can you strengthen those? By also ridding your submissive language. How can you do that? If you're generous and kind, why can't you start a conversation saying something to the effect of, this is a great project that I've been working on. I've done X, Y, and Z. However, Jan and Jane have also contributed in this way. You're still being inclusive. You're still allowing them to shine, but you're also making sure that you're not deferring anything to them, that this is a part of what you have done in that project. It's all about, number 3, reframing. So 1, identify the behaviors. 2, I want you to recognize your strengths and how can you strengthen them and use them in those situations. And number 3, I want you to reframe what you're saying, what you're doing, what you're thinking. You might even be in the midst of, oh, I'm sorry. If you have a moment, take a breath, take a moment, understand that you can take up space. You don't have to make yourself small. Take a breath, take a moment, and say, excuse me, rather than I'm sorry. Excuse me, I have this that I wanted to share with you. I think this is very valid and important, and these are the reasons why. You can say, excuse me. That's a way of saying, I'm sorry for interrupting your time. I can see that your time is important, but excuse me. And then, going after that with what you've done, what a great way to reframe, I'm sorry. I don't feel like I'm worthy. I'm sorry. Take a deep breath and don't say I'm sorry. Try to reframe those behaviors. The next thing I want you to do when you're trying to change these behaviors is I want you to enlist help. This is a hard habit, right? To break submissive behavior. It's so hard to break. The problem with habits is that we do the same habit over and over again. It's a lot of times like when we eat a certain way, we think, why can't I stop eating that bag of popcorn? It kind of like happens, right? You get in a situation before you know it, the whole bag of popcorn's gone. You're like, how did this happen? Well, it's because of how our habits create neural pathways in our brain. And so it's very easy to fall back into that trap of these submissive languages and behaviors. So you have to create a new habit, and sometimes you need some accountability. So I want you to enlist some help. You can either find a journal and you can write down these different situations. What were you feeling? What were you trying to get across? Why were you apologizing? Why were you qualifying your statements? And how are you going to reframe it in the future? Or enlist some help of a friend or a colleague, someone that you can trust, and just say, hey, can you give me like a wink or a nod, like, oh, you did it again. Enlist somebody's help to help you identify this behavior that you're trying to change. And the last thing that you need to do to stop this submissive behavior is consistency. Any of my clients have heard me say it a million times. You have to practice small steps over and over and over again. The smallest things over and over and over again with consistency, because that's what yields long-term results. Long-term results. So listen, submissive language, it's tough, and a lot of women use it. Have we learned it? Yeah, maybe. Is it because we just want to be inclusive? Sure. Or are we lacking confidence? Do you want to change it? I know you do. I know you want to be seen as capable, authentic, and just full of life, right? So take these steps. So number 1, identify that submissive language or the submissive behavior. Identify what it is. Is it I'm sorry? Is it real quick? Are you holding yourself together? Then what I want you to do is I want you to recognize your strengths. How can you use your strengths in that situation? We all have strengths. All of us have strengths. Then I want you to reframe what took place or what's taking place in your mind. Reframe it, rewrite it. say something else. Next, I want you to enlist some help, whether that's a journal or a trusted friend. Then you need to consistently practice these new habits over time. And you're going to see that that submissive language falls away, and people are going to say, wow, she's really got it going on. I never knew she could do the things that she's doing right now. Our language has so much to do with how we are perceived by the people in our environment. So make a difference today. Change that submissive behavior. If you have questions about how do I identify strengths, how do I do any of this, I know it can be really, really difficult. I love using the Clifton Strengths Finder, and this is something that I use in my programs as a life coach. If you have any questions about that, I would love for you to go over to piperharris.net. There's tons of information. You can sign up for newsletters, you can read the blog, you can listen to podcasts. I want to give you as much information as possible so that you can live a sneakered life, a life of walking in your own. I want you to create a life that motivates, drives, empowers, and excites you. So thanks so much for joining me today. It has been a blast talking about submissive behavior and how you can change it. Thanks everybody for joining me, and hopefully I'll be seeing you soon.